Hey, economic warriors. It's your boy, the boss of Boss Economics World, here to break down the juiciest, most wallet-shaking drama in the financial universe. Today, we're diving headfirst into the Fed Chair Hunger Games, Trump edition. Buckle up, because this is gonna be a wild ride through interest rates, political meddling, and enough economic shade to make even Jerome Powell sweat. Let's get it. Oh, folks, the economic soap opera of the century is heating up, and it's got more twists than a Wall Street hedge fund's tax evasion playbook. The latest buzz? Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller is apparently the golden boy in Trump's camp to replace Jerome Powell as Fed Chair when his term expires in May 2026. But wait, there's a whole cast of characters in this drama, including Kevin Warsh, Kevin Hassett, and a search committee featuring Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, VP J.D. Vance, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. It's like The Apprentice, but instead of firing contestants, they're firing up monetary policy debates. Now, if you're a regular viewer of Boss Economics World, you know we don't just report the news, we roast it, dissect it, and serve it up with a side of economic truth bombs. So, let's peel back the layers of this Fed chair fiasco and expose the economic chaos lurking beneath. From political interference to labor market meltdowns, this story is a masterclass in how to turn central banking into a reality TV show. Grab your popcorn, folks, this is gonna be good. First up, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say, the golden-haired former president in the Oval Office. Trump's obsession with the Fed is the stuff of legend. This is the guy who once called Jerome Powell more dangerous than China and suggested the Fed chair should be demoted to a janitor. And now, with Powell's term winding down, Trump's advisors are circling Waller like sharks smelling blood in the water. Why? Because Waller's got a crystal ball, or at least, he's willing to act on forecasts instead of waiting for data to slap him in the face. Translation, he's the kind of guy who might bend to Trump's whims faster than a politician chasing campaign donations. But here's the kicker, folks, the Fed is supposed to be independent. That's right, independent, as in, not a puppet for whoever's sitting in the White House. The Fed's job is to set monetary policy based on data, not political pressure. Yet, Trump's track record shows he sees the Fed as his personal ATM. Remember 2018, when he bullied Powell into pausing rate hikes, only for inflation to spiral out of control later? Or how about his recent rants about tariffs and how Powell's too slow to cut rates? If Waller, or anyone else on Trump's shortlist, takes the helm, will they stand up for Fed independence, or will they just be another cog in Trump's economic reality show? According to a 2024 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBR, political interference in central banking can increase inflation volatility by up to 2.5% annually. Look at Turkey, where President Erdogan's meddling in the central bank led to inflation hitting 85% in 2022. Is that the future Trump wants for the US? Because, folks, if the Fed becomes a political football, we're all gonna get sacked. Now, let's zoom in on Waller himself. This guy's got credentials, PhD economist, former St. Louis Fed bigwig, and a Fed governor since 2020. But what's really turning heads is his recent dissent. Last week, Waller and his colleague Michelle Bowman voted against the Fed's decision to hold rates steady, arguing for a quarter-point cut. Why? Because they saw growing signs of labor market weakness. And guess what? A few days later, a jobs report dropped, showing job growth cooled sharply over the past 3 months. Boom. Waller's looking like Nostradamus over here. But hold up, let's not crown him king just yet. Waller's willingness to act on forecasts rather than hard data is exactly what Trump's team loves about him. And that's a double-edged sword, folks. On one hand, being proactive can help the Fed stay ahead of economic downturns. On the other hand, it opens the door to political pressure. If Trump's in your ear saying, "Cut rates, Chris. My tariffs are gonna tank the economy." Well, a forecast-based approach might just give him the wiggle room to do it. Let's talk labor market weakness. The July 2025 jobs report showed non-farm payrolls grew by just 114,000, way below the 175,000 economists expected. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.3%, the highest since October 2021. And here's the kicker, the labor force participation rate dropped to 62.7%, meaning fewer people are even looking for work. Waller's dissent looks prescient, but is it really about the data, or is it about signaling to Trump that he's the guy to deliver lower rates? Now, let's give Waller some credit where it's due. Back in 2022, this guy went toe-to-toe with economic heavyweights like Larry Summers, arguing the Fed could tame post-pandemic inflation without tanking the labor market. And guess what? He was right. Inflation dropped below 3% by mid-2023, and unemployment never broke 4.2%. That's a W in anyone's book. But here's the thing, folks, past performance is not a guarantee of future results, just ask any Wall Street trader. The economic landscape in 2025 is a whole different beast. Trump's back in office, pushing tariffs like they're going out of style. His proposed 10% universal tariff on imports could jack up consumer prices by 1.5%, according to a 2025 Peterson Institute for International Economics report. And if China retaliates, spoiler alert, they will, we could see supply chain chaos that makes 2021 look like a walk in the park. So, if Waller becomes Fed chair, will he stick to his guns on inflation, or will he cave to Trump's pressure for lower rates to offset tariff pain? Because, folks, you can't have it both ways. Lower rates might juice the economy in the short term, but they'll also fuel inflation, especially with tariffs already pushing prices up. Inflation's currently hovering at 2.9% as of July 2025, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But add in Trump's tariffs, and Goldman Sachs predicts inflation could hit 4.5% by mid-2026. Meanwhile, the Fed's benchmark rate is still at 5.25% to 5.5%. Cutting rates now might feel good, but it's like pouring gasoline on a smoldering fire. Waller's got a tough road ahead, folks. Now, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because this isn't just about Waller, Powell, or even Trump. This is about the future of central banking itself. The Fed's independence is the bedrock of U.S. economic stability. It's why we don't have hyperinflation like Venezuela or currency crises like Argentina. But Trump's not the first politician to meddle, and he won't be the last. Remember Nixon pressuring Fed Chair Arthur Burns in the 1970s? That little stunt gave us stagflation, double-digit inflation and unemployment. If Trump gets his way and installs a Fed chair who's more loyal to him than to economic principles, we're not just talking about higher inflation or a weaker labor market. We're talking about eroding trust in the Fed itself. And trust, folks, is the only thing keeping the dollar from becoming wallpaper. Just look at the 2024 Edelman Trust Barometer, which found only 40% of Americans trust the Fed to do what is right. Compare that to the European Central Bank, where trust is at 55%. If the Fed becomes a political pawn, that 40% could plummet, and then we're in real trouble. A 2025 IMF working paper found that countries with less central bank independence see 3.2% higher average inflation rates over a decade. And here's a fun fact, the US dollar's share of global reserves has already dropped from 71% in 2000 to 58% in 2024, per the Bank for International Settlements. If the Fed loses credibility, that slide could accelerate, and then we're looking at a weaker dollar, higher import costs, and a whole lot of economic pain. Finally, let's talk wild cards, because this Fed chair drama isn't happening in a vacuum. Trump's tariffs are the economic equivalent of throwing a Molotov cocktail into a fireworks factory. The Peterson Institute estimates his tariff plan could cost the average U.S. household $2,600 a year in higher prices. And don't forget the labor market, those weak job numbers Waller's worried about. They're partly due to uncertainty over tariffs and trade wars. Businesses aren't hiring because they don't know if they'll be able to afford raw materials 6 months from now. And then there's the global economy. China's growth is slowing, with GDP growth projected at just 4.6% in 2025, per the World Bank. Europe's barely holding on, with Germany teetering on the edge of recession. If the US starts a trade war, the global economy could take a nosedive, and the Fed, under Waller or anyone else, will be left holding the bag. The World Trade Organization reported a 1.2% decline in global trade volumes in 2024, the first drop in a decade. Add in Trump's tariffs, and Goldman Sachs predicts a further 2% contraction in 2026. Meanwhile, the U.S. manufacturing PMI dropped to 46.8 in July 2025, signaling contraction. Waller's gonna need more than a crystal ball to navigate this mess, he's gonna need a miracle. Alright, economic warriors, let's wrap this up with some boss economics world real talk. The Fed Chair Hunger Games is more than just a personnel decision, it's a battle for the soul of the U.S. economy. If Waller, or anyone else, takes the job, they'll face a gauntlet of political pressure, tariff chaos, and global uncertainty. The question is, will they fight for Fed independence, or will they roll over for Trump's agenda? For you regular folks out there, this drama isn't just Washington gossip, it's your mortgage, your grocery bill, your job security. And for you finance pros, it's time to start stress testing your portfolios, because this ride's about to get bumpy. So, keep your eyes peeled, your wallets tight, and your subscriptions to Boss Economics World locked in, because we'll be here to break down every twist and turn in this economic circus. That's all for today, economic warriors. Smash that like button if you're ready to take on the Fed Chair Hunger Games, and drop a comment with your predictions, Waller, Warsh, or someone else. Until next time, this is your boy, the boss, signing off. Stay savage, stay solvent, and stay woke to the economic madness.